Hello and welcome. Hi, Chong. Hi, Sophie. Nice to have you here. You can see we put in the chat, if you could, or we put on the screen to ask you to put in the chat your name, your school or organization, and the grades that you teach. You can all get to know each other a little bit. Great, Sophie. Yeah, 3-4 at Bowman. And Chong, you're at O'Malley with second grade. Great. Thanks for sharing that. If we're going to get started here in just a couple minutes, and later on, we are going to have you create pieces of nature art. And so we're going to want you to use natural objects. And if you want to take a moment, you're going to be able to use anything in your home, or if it, or you know, where you are, if it's easy to run outside and grab some things right now and be back in a couple minutes, you could do that too. But I just wanted to give you some warning that you will be doing that later. So at the least you can think about where you might grab some natural materials. Hi, Lisa, welcome. Glad you could be here. If you could type your name and school organization in the chat, grades you teach, or that you work with, that would be great. And it's just 4, so I think we'll give it another minute. And Lisa, as you were coming in, I was explaining later on in the program, we're going to give you the chance to create your own nature art using natural materials. So you can be thinking about natural materials you have inside where you are right now, or that would be easily accessible a little bit later in the program. The whole range, yeah, kindergarten to 6th grade. Great.
Yep, across to elementary.
Nice. And where are you? Where do you teach?
Oh, I guess I forgot to type that. I go between 3 elementary schools this year. So I'm at Baxter, Ursa Major, and Wonder Park. You want me to type that in too?
Well, that's okay. You don't have to. That's a lot of typing. But it's good for all of us here just to know, to hear that. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. Thanks, Sophie, for that. That sounds just fine. Okay, well, Molly, shall we get started? Okay, well, it's great to have everybody here today. My name is Louisa Wolfline. I am the Public Programs and Statewide Support Coordinator at the BLM Campbell Creek Science Center. And with me here today is Molly Larmy, who's an outreach educator at the Campbell Creek Science Center. And the Science Center works in partnership with the Iditarod Historic Trail Alliance, the Chugach National Forest, and the Anchorage Park Foundation to offer this series of place-based learning webinars. In normal years, we offer the Iditarod Trail to Every Classroom program, which we abbreviate as ITREC, as an 11-day in-person teacher professional learning program that's spread across a school year. ITREC encourages teachers to think about how they can connect to place, bring their students outside more, bring outside resources into the classroom, and how they can connect with the Iditarod Trail and the cultural and natural landscapes of Alaska. During the pandemic, we are offering some of the core elements of ITREC as a webinar series, and it's called Take It Outside. To continue to serve Alaskan educators in ways that we hope are valuable to you. We hope that you are able to use the information from this and the other programs in the series to encourage your students to get outside and learn more about nature, history, and culture of Alaska. We'll be offering this series through the end of April, and we hope you're able to attend more sessions. If you are interested in receiving a flyer listing the full series, please contact us at iTrekAlaska, that's ITRECALASKA @gmail.com. And with that, and I can put that in the chat too. But with that, I'm going to turn things over to Molly Larmy to take us on our exploration of nature art.
Thanks, Louisa. It's great to be with all of you today for our webinar. We're going to start by just asking you a question. Go ahead and type in the chat box or feel free to unmute to share if that's easier. And describe something you've seen in nature that looked like art to you. So we'll give you about 2 minutes to think and then share in the chat or unmute. And Louisa, I'll ask you to read anything that comes in on the chat, please.
This is Yancy. I'd say like rocks, like, you know, at an oceanside.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for sharing, Lisa.
Molly, we have cloud formations, braided river, shells and driftwood, ice by the coast. So lots of different things coming in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those observations. Today, I was walking my dogs and I noticed this chunk of ice, and it looked like it had been frozen and thawed and then frozen and thawed as the days get warmer here. And there was just all these cool swirls and different elements to it. And I thought it just looked so much like a piece of artwork. So that's really an important thing that we'll talk about today, is how nature can be inspiration for artwork and how we can use nature and natural elements to create art for ourselves and for the young people that we work with. So I'm going to start today by just talking a little bit about the history of nature art, which is also called environmental art. And that term, environmental art, is an umbrella term for several movements, including land art, earth art, which is also known as earthworks, and eco art. But of course, creating art with natural materials, it's nothing new. The oldest known evidence of humans using natural materials to create art dates back around 35,000 years ago. And for millennia, indigenous cultures have used natural items available to them to create small and large works of art and culture, such as Serpent Mound, which you see on the screen here. And that was created by ancient Native American people of modern day Ohio. And this effigy mount, which is a mound in the shape of an animal, and of course, in this case, a snake, is thought to be at least 900 years old. And the practice of creating art from nature continues in indigenous cultures today. This practice also inspired the land art movement of the 1970s. So the land art movement was a response to social unrest and an increasingly unnatural, polluted world. And land artists viewed the natural world as a place for self-expression. Nancy Holt, who was a famous land artist, she created this major earthwork you can see on the screen in Finland. Another example of land art is this piece from Walter de Maria, his 1977 piece, The Lightning Field, which is a grid of 400 stainless steel poles that are set in a rectangle in the desert down in New Mexico, I think. And the poles attracted lightning strikes in the right conditions. One of the most famous pieces of land art you can see on the screen here is Spiral Jetty, which was created by Robert Smithson in 1970. And it was actually inspired by Serpent Mound, which we saw earlier. And it is one of land art's most iconic monuments. but it did permanently alter the landscape of Great Salt Lake where it was created. So although the land art and earthworks movement used the natural environment as a canvas, it wasn't always environmentally friendly. Other land artists like Martin Hill and Philippa Jones, they take a more sensitive, sustainable approach. So they use only natural materials and gravity to create their sculptures, which is pretty incredible. And those sculptures will break down over time and cause no permanent damage to the ecosystem. Land art can also be used to tell a story. So I have a really cool example here from a Yukon formline Tlingit artist. Her name is Jensen of the Carcross and Tagish First Nation. And she created this large art installation of a raven, which measures 300 feet in diameter. And it's made of snowshoe prints that she did on a frozen lake in the snow. And she captured her work in a short film called The Art Show of Winter, which shows her creating the installation and narrating the Tlingit story of how Raven brought light into the world. And the film crew that captured her creative process, they took more than 60 drone flights over her while she took a total of 15,400 steps, which took her about 11 hours. So I'm going to go ahead and play this video for you now. And I think Louisa has the link. If the video is choppy for you, you can watch it on your own. She'll put a link in the chat, but I'll go ahead and play it for you now. Might just take 1 or 2 minutes.
You are the cut your clut kakamjagate. Yakasha the honey kaduse, cleanness cook to jiwu, Achyan the kinyel, Kayel, Weshawat am sitin, Yahin tada us, Yel kit gash would lier, Weshawat on hin dena, Weshawat dukane our o. We kasha the honey do Dutch hunk jit am si in we coke. Tel konadach kayen tunjek. We at giats o nada hawatan. We kutkanaha kadis kakakan kua atudach yewuni. We at giats o to ye husiti. Ach aya you a yakakan dis kakutkanaha kumziti.
So I think that is just such a cool example of how land art or environmental art can tell a story and connect to culture and also bring awareness of culture as well. So in recent years, artists have also created the eco art movement. And the eco art movement, it seeks to raise awareness and invites dialogue about human impacts on the natural world, which of course are all the more obvious these days. So one example of eco art is on your screen here. This is Jeremy Underwood's Human Debris series. And it's a commentary on what humans leave behind in the natural space. So he builds site-specific sculptures out of the trash or discarded items he finds in a place. And he highlights the environmental conditions of these areas through his artwork. So this piece on the screen highlighted the environmental condition of waterways in Houston, Texas. So now let's dive a little deeper into the world of nature art. For the next few minutes, I'm going to highlight 3 artists whose art is created with that sensitivity toward habitats and sustainability I've been talking about. So the first artist I'm going to talk about, her name is Mendieta, and she was a Cuban feminist artist and a pioneer of the land art movement. And her most famous art series is called Silhouetta or Silhouettes series. Switch my screen here for a second. There we go. So in her Silhouetta series, she created figures out of natural materials like grass, flowers, branches, and mud. And Mendieta, she was best known for what she called, quote, earth body works, which revolve around the body, nature, and the spiritual connections between them. She often filled her silhouettes with natural materials, like flowers you can see here. And in an interview, she said she wanted viewers of her work to disregard their gender, their race, or other defining societal factors, and instead connect with the humanity they shared with others. Mendieta, she was actually exiled from her home in Cuba during the Castro regime, and she went to live in the United States with her sister. And she said about her work, quote, "The making of my silueta in nature keeps the transition between my homeland and my new home. It is a way of reclaiming my roots and becoming one with nature. Although the culture in which I live is a part of me, my roots and cultural identity are a result of my Cuban heritage." Another pioneer of the land art movement is Andy Goldsworthy, and he creates large and small scale transitory works using local natural materials. And he also keeps this really delightful daily journal where he records his thoughts about the creation process of his works. And the entry that he wrote actually for the right side of the screen reads, "I like this piece a lot. Good day's work. Cold hands when working with mud, but okay otherwise." And Goldsworthy's work has actually taken him all over the world, including to the North Pole, which is pretty cool. But much of his work is created in his adopted home of Scotland. As you can see from this image, he likes to play with color and use natural materials like leaves to create interesting contrasts and depths. He also plays with texture, like in this sculpture, you can see of sycamore leaves and stalks. And he actually held this sculpture to the ground with thorns from the sycamore. But whether he is constructing rock walls, giant stick nests, or ice sculptures like this one you can see, he only uses balance. Excuse me. My dogs have joined me today, but he only uses gravity to hold the materials together. So there's no unnatural items here. And he just lets them exist until wind and rain or time break them down. Because much of his work is so temporary, like this sculpture you can see here, it's just made out of wet leaves. He has to take photographs to document their existence. And that is what is captured and left behind. So for his photographs, he also includes these really witty, detailed descriptions with each piece. And this is what he hangs in galleries around the world. So he wrote about this piece you see on the screen: "Feathers plucked from dead heron, cut with sharp stone, stripped down one side, about 3.5 feet overall length. Made over 3 calm days, cold mornings, frost, smell from heron becoming pungent as each day warmed up." And I just love that. It puts such a picture in my mind of his creative process as he goes through. The final artist I'm going to highlight today is Raku Inoue, and he's a contemporary Japanese artist who works across different mediums. And I'm going to talk about his Natura Insects series. And in this series, he uses natural materials to create sculptures of insects. And according to Inoue, here's a quote from him: "This series all started out as a morning creative exercise where I would go out in the backyard with my cup of coffee, get some fresh air, and collect random materials to create whatever came to mind that morning. It was sort of a meditative warming up activity that I would partake regularly while enjoying one of my favorite drinks in a stress-free environment. These creatures bloomed to be the result of this creative drive." So in this series, Inoue uses natural materials to represent the anatomy pretty realistically of real-life insects, like this beetle or this butterfly. Inoue lays out the floral insect arrangements on blank textured paper, and then he takes really high quality photographs. And he posts his photographs on Instagram, where he has more than 50,000 followers. And if you want to follow him on Instagram, his handle is Reikon_creations. Reikon spelled R-E-I-K-A-N. Inoue said about this series, quote, "Many of the insects were created with plants that grow in my backyard. I have witnessed the seeds sprouting, growing tall and blossoming as beautiful flowers. I nurtured them from their beginning stage to their final stage, and come decay, they return to the earth through composting. I think it's so awesome and beautiful how he just takes things that he noticed with his morning cup of coffee and the things that are blooming or decaying in his backyard, and he created this really outstanding series with it. So while the three artists that I highlighted have honed their skills over many years, everyone from kids to adults can create art from nature. And this lovely piece you see on the screen was actually made by an educator on a trip to Hawaii. And out of respect to the place, it is truly ephemeral. So it's created in a place that gets washed out by the tide each day. And now I hope you're feeling inspired by the artists and the artwork that we saw on our quick nature art journey. Because now I'm going to turn it over to Louisa, who's going to facilitate the more active part of our webinar. All right, Louisa, take it away.
Thanks, Molly. Yeah, and I wonder if we might want to just see if there are any questions at this point before we dive into creation. So if you have a question, you could put it in the chat or raise your hand. And I'm not seeing anything right away, so we must be itching to get creating. So Molly just shared a variety of examples of nature art created by artists and by educators and others. And so we would like to give you a chance to create your own nature art. And I think I'd like to take 20 minutes, if that's okay, Molly. Okay, great. So you're going to have 20 minutes to create your own piece of nature art. And it might be something specific, such as creating an animal like the Inoue insects that Molly shared, or like you can see at the bottom of this screen. It might be something non-specific, a sculpture made from twigs or leaves, something made in the snow. It may lay flat, it might rise up into 3 dimensions. It's really up to you. Hopefully you have natural materials, either where you are right now, just in your in that space, or you have easy access to the outdoors where you can grab some things. I'm giving you a little extra time just because I know we didn't have you gather anything ahead of time. And yeah, maybe 20 minutes is too long. Part of this exercise is to show you how creative you actually can be in a very short amount of time. And so if it's easier to, I don't know, if it's easier to just confine it to 15 minutes, that is great too. I just wanted to be sure you had time to gather materials. So Molly, if you could go to the next slide. Everybody needs to head to the space where you're going to create your piece. You might need to, run around your house, office, whatever, gather up materials, go outside, and then create. Have fun creating. And you might draw inspiration from one of the folks who Molly shared, or you might have your own inspiration from elsewhere. So I see 4:23 right now. So how about if we're back at 4:40? That's 17 minutes. Okay, so everybody back at 4:40. When you come back, you can turn off your screens, go create, and then when you come back, type something in the chat or come back on video so that we know that you're back. And we will see you here at 4:40. And if you have questions, both Molly and I are here and happy to answer during this full time. Have fun. Okay, oh, I see. I'm sorry, I was not paying any attention to the chat. Okay, so it looks like folks are finished creating. So Molly, if you could go to the next slide. We weren't sure of the camera capabilities, and then we have some technical things on our side today. So if folks could type in the chat, what materials did you use for what you just created? And which artist, if any, that Molly shared, or if you have another one who inspired you, who inspired what you did? I see Gina was using pine cones. Craig was using rocks, I know. Dried grass, twigs, rocks, sand. I'm curious, and maybe if which artist inspired you is maybe that's too vague or hard a question since you don't have all their names in front of you. Maybe did you create pieces that were like did you represent animals? Did you do things more abstract? Did you, just what sorts of things did you create? Evergreen limbs and leaves, inspired by insects? Oh, great. Melting snow footprints inspired by Anya Mendieta. Yeah, so obviously the natural materials at hand and the different seeing what other artists have done can all inspire us to create things. Okay, rocks, twigs, spruce boughs, and leaves. So variety. Several of you used a variety of materials in your creations. Molly, could you go to the next slide, please? So I'd like to just have you think about what we just did and take a moment. If you have paper and pencil or just something to write with, if you could just take just a couple minutes and reflect on how did you feel during that creation process? And what thoughts do you have about the difference between how we value temporary art and art that lasts? And it's 4:42, so let's just go to, I don't know, 4:46. So these are some questions that could lead to, a lot of deep thoughts. Oh, I see Gina put in the chat, working with the natural elements feels less intimidating. Yeah, the transitory element of nature art has a unique feeling element that is difficult to place a value on. Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Gina. Is there anybody else who would like to either come off mute or type in the chat answers to either one of these questions? You don't have to do both.
I thought the activity of creating this little piece of art was really fun. It was fast, furious, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm curious if people found that knowing that it was fast, that it felt liberating to be fast as opposed to like negative pressure to be fast. Did you find your inner critic silence? It felt zen, especially after teaching. Yeah, that's great. I'm glad we were able to offer that opportunity today. Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, well, Molly, oh, I see temporary art was spontaneous and I was satisfied with the finished product sooner. Yeah, So true. Mhm. Yeah, and I've done this with kids and with adults, and it seems like kind of for everybody that a short time limit is actually really liberating. And then I think it can lead to individuals repeating it when they're by themselves. Maybe it more often, like they may actually do it when they never thought to do that when they were outside. And so having done it, even with a short time period, may lead to doing it again themselves. So we looked at a variety of nature artists. We took time to create our own nature art. We reflected on what we did. And I'm curious, based on all that we've done, how might you incorporate nature art in your curriculum or teaching? And you can put this in the chat. If you want to take a moment and just think about that, how might you use this? How might you use nature art? Or would you use it in science or social studies lessons? Yeah, I think, I don't know if this is what you were thinking of, Chong, but I know this, thinking of like the cultural things that came out in some of the artists that Molly presented, and then the scientific representation of insects that also came out. So, and yeah, there was just a mix of those subjects reflected in the artists Molly shared. A fun element to incorporate in our trailside trivia outings. Yeah, that sounds like a great application. And having students create outside when you lose your classroom or gym for an event and there's not much melted space to move around outside in the classroom. Yeah, this could be a great like thing to have in your back pocket to do. Quick, easy, and fun, and really energizing from a creative point of view. Yes, it is a great activity on a beach. There's lots of material typically on a beach, not to mention the beach itself, the sand or rocks or whatever it's made of. Yeah, great. Well, we really appreciate you sharing all these different ideas. And before I wrap up, I guess I would just ask, are there, does anybody have any final questions or final thoughts you'd like to share? All right, well, Molly and I really appreciate you joining us here today. We hope this was a quiet end to what may have been a busy day. There are 3 more sessions in the Take It Outside series. And those are listed here: outdoor classrooms at the Sand Lake Outdoor Classroom on April 5th, science along the trail on April 21st. There will be BLM specialists sharing the science work that they are doing along the Iditarod National Historic Trail. And then the Teachers Lounge on April 26th, which will be a chance for teachers from Alaska to get together virtually with teachers along the Appalachian Trail on the east coast of the US. And so if registration is required, so the link is here if you would like to sign up for any of those. And by joining today, you will also get a link. You'll have a follow-up email with a link to a recording of this video if you are interested in. Great, and thanks, Molly. The email will have an additional resources document with all the artists who we talked about today. So thanks everybody for being here, and we hope to see you at another Take It Outside webinar. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.